Right now, somewhere, someone is staring at a screen, heart pounding, about to move their savings into something they don't fully understand, because everyone else is already in, and it feels like the last boat leaving the dock. That feeling has a name, and it is not new. It is not even remotely new. Almost 3,000 years ago, a Greek poet named Homer described that exact feeling with terrifying precision. A song so perfect, so tailored to what you personally want to hear, that men steered their ships straight into the rocks to get closer to it. He called it the Song of the Sirens. Today we're going to open that story back up because it turns out it is the most accurate description of financial FOMO ever written, 3,000 years before the word FOMO existed. Quick context, because it matters. Odysseus is the king of a small island called Ithaca, and one of the Greek commanders who won the 10-year Trojan War, the War of the Wooden Horse, which was his idea. That war ended, but getting home did not go the way anyone expected. Homer's Odyssey is the story of Odysseus spending another 10 full years trying to sail back to his own wife, his own son, and his own throne. Getting blown off course, trapped by monsters, seduced by goddesses, and tested again and again by his own worst impulses. He is not a perfect hero. He is curious to a fault, proud to a fault, and constantly a few bad decisions away from losing everything he's trying to get back to. Which is exactly why the story still works today. It isn't really about monsters. It's about a man trying to outthink his own brain. Before Odysseus reaches the Sirens, he stops on the island of the enchantress Circe, a goddess who'd already turned half his crew into pigs before eventually becoming an ally. As he prepares to leave, Circe pulls him aside and gives him a warning that is frankly better financial advice than most people get from an actual financial advisor. She tells him exactly what's ahead. An island where beautiful creatures called the Sirens sing a song so irresistible that any sailor who hears it forgets everything, his home, his family, his own name, and steers straight toward them, only to die on rocks littered with the bones of everyone who came before. And here's the critical detail. Circe doesn't tell him to simply be strong or use willpower when the moment comes. She tells him to build a plan now while he's still calm and clear-headed, because she knows that once the song starts, his judgment will already be gone. Here's the detail most people miss because pop culture flattens it into pretty ladies sing pretty songs, sailors get distracted. That's not what Homer wrote. The Sirens don't just sing something beautiful, they sing something specific to Odysseus. In the actual text, they call out to him by name, and they promise him perfect knowledge. They claim to know everything that happened at Troy, everything happening everywhere on Earth, and everything that will ever happen in the future. To a man whose entire identity is built on being the cleverest person in every room, that is not a random temptation. It is engineered precisely to be the one thing he cannot resist. And that's the actual mechanism of every modern financial trap, too. The pitch is never generic. It's always you specifically are smart enough, early enough, or informed enough to get in on this before everyone else figures it out. FOMO doesn't sell you the crowd. It sells you the feeling of being the exception to the crowd. So here's what Odysseus actually does, and it is a masterclass in knowing your own weaknesses. He melts down a block of beeswax and packs it into the ears of every one of his men, so they will physically not be able to hear a single note of the song. Then he orders them to tie him, Odysseus himself, tightly to the ship's mast, hand and foot. And he gives them one final, absolute instruction, delivered before any of this starts. No matter what he says, no matter how much he begs, screams, or orders them to let him go once the song begins, they are to bind him tighter, not looser. He does not trust future Odysseus, the one who will be standing in the song's grip, to make a single good decision. So present Odysseus, the calm one, builds a system that takes the decision out of that future man's hands entirely. The ship draws close. The wind drops, strangely to nothing. Homer notes the sea itself goes still, as if holding its breath. The crew, deaf by design, rows on exactly as ordered, watching their king's face rather than listening to anything at all. And then the song reaches Odysseus, and every plan, every warning, every ounce of good judgment he had an hour ago evaporates instantly. He does not calmly resist. He fights the ropes with everything he has. He shouts. He orders his own men to free him, promises them anything, threatens them, and his men, unable to hear a word of it, simply row harder and pull the ropes tighter, exactly as instructed. The ship passes the rocks. The song fades behind them. And only then, only once the danger is physically behind him, does Odysseus's mind clear again, and the men finally cut him loose. Now, here's where this stops being ancient history. In 2022, one of the largest cryptocurrency exchanges in the world, FTX, collapsed in a matter of days, wiping out billions of dollars belonging to ordinary depositors almost overnight. Its founder was convicted of fraud and in March 2024 sentenced to 25 years in prison, with a court ordering over $11 billion in forfeiture to try to repay victims. But here's the part that matters for us. Almost none of those depositors were reckless people by nature. Many were cautious, ordinary savers. What pulled them in was the same mechanism from the myth, a promise engineered to feel personal. You specifically understand this technology early. You specifically found the platform backed by serious investors and celebrity endorsements before it went mainstream. You specifically would be foolish to miss double-digit returns everyone around you was already posting screenshots of. Nobody hears a generic pitch and empties their savings. They hear a pitch that sounds like it was written for them, and that's exactly the mechanism Homer described 3,000 years earlier. And in case anyone thinks this is a crypto problem or an internet problem, go back nearly 400 years to the Netherlands in the winter of 1636. Tulip bulbs, just bulbs, flowers that hadn't even bloomed yet, became the hottest speculative asset in Europe. Between November of that year and February of 1637, contract prices for ordinary tulip bulbs rose roughly 20-fold. At the peak of the frenzy, a single rare bulb could be traded for the price of one of the grandest canal houses in Amsterdam, garden and coach house included. People weren't buying flowers. They were buying the feeling of being early to something everyone around them was suddenly getting rich from. Then in February 1637, buyers simply stopped showing up to a routine bulb auction. The market froze in an afternoon, and the entire mania collapsed within weeks. 3,000 years apart, a Greek myth and a Dutch flower market described the identical trap, the fear of being the one person who didn't get in. So why does this keep working on smart, cautious people over and over for 3,000 years? Because the Sirens song and a scam pitch in a meme stock group chat all exploit the exact same wiring. first, it's personalized. It doesn't feel like a pitch. It feels like being let in on a secret meant specifically for you. Second, it uses social proof. Seeing other people already celebrating gains triggers a herd instinct older than language itself. Standing apart from the group has always, historically, been dangerous. And third, it hijacks urgency. The sense that the window is closing right now shuts down the slow, careful, skeptical part of your brain and lets the fast, emotional part make the decision instead. None of this is a character flaw unique to gullible people. It is baseline human hardware, which is exactly why Odysseus didn't try to out-willpower it in the moment. He built a system in advance that didn't require willpower at all. Here is the actual practical takeaway, and it's the same one Circe gave Odysseus. The goal was never to become someone who feels no temptation. Nobody achieves that, not even a legendary hero. The goal is to make the decision before the moment arrives, while your judgment is still intact, and then remove your future self's ability to override it. Odysseus didn't fight the song. He pre-committed with wax and rope before he could even hear it. That is precisely what an automatic transfer into savings on payday accomplishes. It takes the decision out of the hands of the version of you standing in a casino or staring at a chart at 2 a.m., or watching a countdown timer on a limited-time investment. You are not weaker than Odysseus if a hot tip makes your pulse race. He felt it too. The only difference between him and every shipwrecked sailor whose bones littered that shore is that he built the rope in advance. So, concretely, 3 ropes worth tying today. 1, a strict waiting period in writing for yourself. Any investment or bet you hear about today doesn't get a single dollar for at least 72 hours, no exceptions, no matter how urgent it feels. Real opportunities survive 3 days. Traps are specifically designed not to. 2, automate the boring stuff before temptation shows up. Savings and long-term investing set to move on their own, on a schedule. So building wealth doesn't depend on your motivation on any given Tuesday. 3, find your own Circe. One person in your life, a partner, a friend, an actual advisor, who you've pre-authorized to say no to you, and whose no you've agreed in advance to actually listen to before you act, not after. Odysseus needed his whole crew to save him from himself. You're allowed to need one person, too. It's worth noticing that this myth just came roaring back into the culture. Christopher Nolan's big-screen adaptation of the Odyssey has audiences discovering, or rediscovering, this exact story right now, 3,000 years after it was first told around a fire. That's not a coincidence, and it's not just nostalgia. It's because we still constantly need reminding that the smartest person on the ship is not the one who claims he'll never be tempted. It's the one who plans for the moment he knows he will be, and ties the knot before he ever hears the first note of the song. So here's a real question worth sitting with. What's your version of that island right now, and have you tied any ropes for it yet? Or are you still telling yourself you'll simply resist when the moment comes? If this reframed the story for you, subscribe, because next time we're opening another classic that's been quietly shaping how people think for centuries. And this next one might hit even closer to home.